A year changes everything in the world of politics, and that is particularly true for my next guest. Just over 12 months ago, he was Minister for Higher Education before being elected unopposed as the new leader of Fine Gael and becoming Taoiseach after Leo Varadkar stepped down. He went on to lead his party into the general election as the youngest ever and shortest serving Taoiseach, and now he serves as Tánaiste, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade and Minister for Defence. Here to talk Taoiseach, Tánaiste, tariffs and triple locks. Would you please welcome Simon Harris.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you.
Lovely to be here. Thank
Welcome
you for having me.
to the show.
Thank you.
Look, that's loads to get through. I suppose we should start. Can we talk housing?
Sure, of course.
The housing czar was meant to be appointed at the start of the week. We got to the end of the week. There wasn't a housing czar appointed. We're hearing that tonight, reports that Fine Gael blocked that. What was your role in this week's drama?
Well, look, I mean, they used to say a week's a long time in politics. It seems things have sped up a lot since then. It's been a busy week, but I think we have to take a step back here. What we're trying to do is important because there'll be people around the country watching this programme. They'll be looking at the television and they'll be wondering, when are my son or daughter living in the house, the adult son or daughter, ever going to be able to get out and buy their own home? And we've heard from lots of people, and we've heard from the Housing Commission, that we have to break down the silos. Lots of sites around Ireland where you can build houses. If only there was water, if only there was wastewater, if only there was electricity, if only the local authority was playing its part. So we wanted to set up, not a czar or any of this sort of stuff, a housing activation office. And being honest, I'm very supportive of that. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I didn't agree with.
So why did you block it? Was it the money?
No, to be honest, I don't like the word block. I just didn't think it was a good idea, being honest, to go straight ahead with the appointment.
Particular person.
With the appointment of any kind of individual person on a set salary without just taking a little bit of time to think this through. And when I talked that through, being truthful, I think the Taoiseach agreed with me. So we made a good decision this week. Get on with the office, but let's get this right. We only get one chance to get this right. I heard right across the country, people are not happy with where we are with housing. They want us to do more. And let's get this right. Let's get this right for the next generation.
OK, I'm a wee bit confused. You're in the government. The housing minister put forward someone. That then didn't happen, and you're saying that that was a good decision?
No, so I'm saying there's two parts to the decision. First part is to set up the office. Get this right, second people from Irish Water and other utilities, get them around the table and stop this national game of pass the parcel when it comes to housing. The second part of the decision is, how do you populate the office? How do you do it in a way that makes sense? Crucially, that gets the right skill sets, the right people, and gets value for money.
Were you
consulted? And what the government decided was, well, of course I was consulted when it came to the leaders' meeting on a Monday night. And what we decided then was, let's get it set up, but let's hear a little bit more about, because what we don't want is this office mired in controversy from the start. That's not going to help build houses at all. Taking political potshots isn't going to help build houses. Let's get it right. And that's my position. And like I say, I think the Taoiseach agreed with that too.
There was a lot of headlines about the amount of money for that role. Do you think €430,000 is a fair amount for that job?
I don't. But I think it is most important that we get the skill set right. I mean, I want to understand fully how we're going to staff this office in a way. And let's be honest, this isn't about any one person. I mean, if housing could be fixed by any one person, it'd be long fixed. This is about breaking down the silos, getting the right people around the table, knocking heads together, and not accepting this buck passing anymore. That's for Irish Water, that's for the ESB. And that's the purpose of the activation office. And being honest, it wasn't my idea, my party's idea, or any other party's idea. It came from the Housing Commission when we brought experts together, and we're going to get this right.
What does it say about your party being in government in some form or other for 14 years? You've been a minister for 9 years. Housing targets aren't been met. You're now welcoming somebody else coming in to try to sort it out. What does that say about the work that you've done so far?
So yeah, I don't buy into that you're welcoming someone in to sort it out. What you're doing is bringing in expertise to break down the silos. I think that's a good thing.
Is that not the same thing?
No, it's not. I mean, you've got to, no matter what role you're in, the minister of the day has a role to play. That's to set the policy, pass the legislation, get the budget. But you also have to be willing to bring in expertise, sometimes from the private sector as well, to make sure that we have everybody pulling in the same direction. We've made some progress on housing. That's objectively true. We can all point to hundreds of people every week buying their new home. But you know what's also objectively true? It's nowhere near enough.
And
we have to
you're
get
also missing
300,000.
targets.
Yeah. Now, again, I can tell you, but I've no interest in telling you. I can give you all the lines about how we've done better and et cetera, et cetera. It's irrelevant. The point is we're not where we need to be. And I heard from the people across the country, they've given us another shot to get this right. And by hell, we got to do it, because there's a whole generation of people who are depending on us, and we're up for it.
Sinn Féin have said that the government's in a panic over housing. Are you?
No, they would say that, but look, I mean, pot shots and back and forths on the Friday evening of a bank holiday weekend isn't going to help build one house. What is going to help build houses is actually getting this right. And being honest, working with everybody to get this right. And of course, we're not in a panic. We've got to get this right, and we're going to do it. And I do think establishing the office, breaking down the silos, bringing in the expertise is a good step. But I also think it was right to pause on the next step, because I think had we just ploughed straight on, I think we would have regretted that. I think it would have been mired in kind of controversy from day one, and I don't think that would have helped.
If you're looking for somebody to sort it out, and they're watching what happened this week, and they're seeing somebody else coming in, and then the money is announced, and then that person steps back, why would anybody jump into that fire?
Oh, I think there's lots of people out there who want to play an important role in relation to this, and I don't think there'll be any doubt that we'll be able to find the appropriate people to fill this office. I really don't.
Okay. It's been a year of highs and lows for you. Youngest ever Taoiseach, also the shortest serving Taoiseach. How do both those things sit with you?
Being honest, I barely had a chance to think it all through and process it. It's been an incredibly busy year. It's been an absolute incredible honour to serve as the leader of my party, to serve in government, to be able to get out of bed every day and go into work and try and make a difference. Life comes at you fast in politics. I had to, again, probably no one, but it's probably worth remembering all that happened during the year. You remember I became leader straight into a local elections, then a European elections, a budget, then a general election, then trying to form a government. So there's been an awful lot that's come at us. But, you know, I'm really enjoying it. These are huge opportunities to try and make a difference, to make a positive impact. And, you know, as you say, highs and lows. But I think if I had told anybody, and I think if anybody objectively was sitting here last year and predicted my party would, you know, do well in the local elections, get more votes than any other party, do well in the European elections, more votes than any other party, and
come third in the number of seats in the general election. I mean, you were in the lead in the polls going into the general election.
Yeah.
It didn't work out the way you wanted. What was the one big reason why you think people didn't vote for you in the numbers that you wanted?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think, again, being truthful, politics is all about what time you want to compare it with. You're right. Did we end up worse on the general election day than 2 weeks before the general election? Absolutely. Did we end up in a better position on general election day than we did 6 months previously? Absolutely.
I'm just thinking from your point of view, you went into that election, you know, and you were, I'm sure, hoping to come out of it as Taoiseach again.
Of course. I mean, you always go into elections. Everyone goes into elections hoping to win. And we did get 458,000 votes. We only had 17 TDs contest the election. I mean, quite incredible. Again, remember, so many people were retiring. I was having to find new candidates right across the country. Didn't have a huge amount of time to get that done. Went straight from local elections and European elections into the general election. And then we came out with 38 seats, and 458,000 people went out and gave us the first preference vote. And I think, again, a year out, did anybody think Fine Gael was going to be back in government? Many people were predicting when I became leader, you know, I'd end up having to rebuild my party from opposition and Sinn Féin would lead the next government. That didn't happen. So I think we're in a reasonably good place.
There was a moment in the general election, a lot of people think it changed things for your campaign when you met Charlotte Fallon, disability worker down in Kanturk. She accused you of neglecting carers. How did that encounter go so wrong for you?
You can imagine I've thought about this so many times, and I can assure you I've kicked myself pretty hard over this for two reasons. Firstly, that day alone, I'd say I'd had hundreds of conversations, many of which went very well. And you can imagine how annoyed you'd be with yourself that in one brief moment, I let myself down. And I was very clear about that. I was raised in a household where if you make a mess, if you make a mistake, you don't try and talk your way out of it. You put your hands up and say, got that wrong. And God, I did. The second reason I was really irked with myself was there isn't an issue I care more about than disability. So I wouldn't be in politics if my brother hadn't been born with autism.
You started out as a teenage campaigner.
Yeah, it's what brought me into politics. Lots of people know that. And it's an issue I passionately care about. And you know, it was a long, I'm not making excuses, I don't believe in making excuses, I got it wrong. It was a long day. I was a bit burnt out on that day and got it wrong. But, and here's the important thing, firstly, you learn from it. You've always got to learn. And secondly, the issue that Charlotte was raising about pay for people in the disability sector. Today, workers in that sector voted to accept a new pay agreement that is thankfully going to see a much better pay situation for them.
When you look at the lack of school places for autistic kids,
yes,
at the moment, would you accept that maybe you failed to fix the stuff that you actually wanted to get into politics for in the first place?
It's a really good question, and no, I wouldn't, but would I accept we've a lot more to do? I would. So again, if I look at the Ireland of today versus the Ireland that I grew up in and watched my mother and father, but particularly my mother having to work so hard to get a school place for my own brother. I was hearing you talk about Jerry Ryan's anniversary. She used to talk about Jerry Ryan being her saviour because he'd be the person who'd keep her sane on the radio in the car when she was driving ridiculously long distances to get my brother into school. And I look at how so many towns have changed, so many schools have changed, how many autism classes have been opened. We're in a vastly better place. Do I also accept that the job isn't done? Absolutely. And one of the things I must say that I find from a lot of parents is when it comes to therapy services, even when they get a school place, they say, look, I got the school place, I think finally, I'm going to be in a better place in terms of my child's well-being, only to realise that they then have to go on a separate waiting list for speech and language therapy, occupational therapy. Only in the last couple of weeks, we've announced a big change to that. We're going to create a national therapy service in education for the first time ever, where if your child gets a place, firstly in a special school, there'll actually be speech and language therapists, OTs, physios. That's the sort of joined up thinking, and that's what motivates me today. So there's always more to do.
All of that seems like progress. When families are camping out outside Leinster House just last month to protest about places for their autistic kids, some families are trying 20, 30 schools before they can get a place. I mean, that's not a success in anybody's eyes, is it?
Of course it's not. And let me be really clear, I'm sitting here very honestly, truthfully and factually saying there's a hell of a lot more to do. And to those parents, I want them to know we're working around the clock to get this right. And it is that need for the joined up thinking. That is why we now have a Cabinet Committee on Disability. It is why we're going to create a national therapy service. It is why we're really beefing up what they call the National Council for Special Education, because no parent should find themselves having to make all those calls and all those inquiries. The NCSE needs to work with them. And I accept there's a lot more to do in relation to that. But that's why we come to work. I mean, politics is not a job that you should go into if you ever want the in-tray to be emptied. There's always more to do. There's always challenges, and we keep at it.
I want to go into something else, which is in your in-tray at the minute, pretty near the top. It's tough economic times. You want to increase defence spending.
Yes.
There are problems in housing and health and education. Do you think that's really what people want their money spent on at the minute?
I do, because being honest, it's not a question of either or. If, God forbid, something happened in our seas, and we all hear about ships in the seas and undersea cables, or if, God forbid, something happened in our skies, you'd rightly have me sitting in this chair going, why the hell did you not do something about that? I mean, Ireland is the lowest country in terms of spending on defence. We're militarily neutral. I'm really proud of that, by the way. I think it's a part of our values. It's part of who we are as a country. But we still have to make sure we've got an idea of what goes on above the sky and below the sea. And even when we increase defence spending, and we're talking about doing this incrementally over a number of years, it will still be much, much less than many, many countries in the European Union spend. So it's not an either or. You've got to do more than one thing when you're in government.
I want to ask you about neutrality. I want to ask you about the triple lock. Yourself and Micheál Martin have been working to remove that triple lock mechanism, which requires UN approval for more than 12 Irish soldiers to go into a battle zone. Why do you want that removed?
Because I believe when the people of Ireland go out and vote in an election and elect people to the Dáil and ultimately then to the government, that the government and the people's representatives should decide where our peacekeepers go. Our peacekeepers, we're not talking about getting involved in any wars here, we're talking about peacekeeping. The UN, something I really value, I think something Irish people really value, but at the moment it is a statement of fact that a permanent member of the Security Council can veto where we send our peacekeeping troops. And I don't think Vladimir Putin, or quite frankly anybody else, should be able to tell us where to send our peacekeepers. I'm just back from Lebanon. I mean, I'm so proud of the men and women out in Lebanon. Decades of Irish people going out there and doing incredible work. I was up in Renmore in Galway, seeing off the next crew who are about to head out too. Brilliant, brilliant people. I thank them for their service. Imagine, though, how we'd feel if that mission came up to be renewed and somebody on the Security Council said, Irish people want to stay involved in that. So this isn't about removing anything. It's about basically reforming things. So yes, we send only peacekeepers. We remain militarily neutral. We adhere to the UN Charter, and it would require the support of the government and the Dáil. I think that's common sense, being very honest.
If you are sending Irish troops around the world without UN approval, clearly you're taking somebody's side.
Well, I mean...
Is that not the heart of neutrality? I mean, back in 2013, Micheál Martin said that the triple lock was at the core of Irish neutrality?
Well, look, I'm not going to speak for others, but my position, the government's position, the Taoiseach's
Are they intrinsically linked to triple lock and neutrality?
No, I don't think they are. Because, you see, what you said there is very interesting. We're militarily neutral, but we're not politically neutral. I mean, I don't think people in this country think that what Vladimir Putin is doing is right and are saying we should stay neutral. We want to support Ukraine because Ukraine is a sovereign country. We don't get militarily aligned. We don't get ourselves involved in wars. But we still know right from wrong, and we still want to participate in peacekeeping missions. There's also lots of other practical examples where if we want to work, say, with other European countries in initiatives maybe to look at issues like drug smuggling in the Mediterranean, issues that sometimes don't have a UN mandate. Again, I think it makes sense for us to be able to do this. But sometimes the issues get conflated in Ireland, and I think that does a disservice, actually, to a proper debate about defence, security and peacekeeping.
You're talking about being politically neutral there. You've been very vocal about the situation in Gaza. You recognise Palestine as a state very early on, as Taoiseach. It's been reported that weapons parts for Israel are being flown through Irish airspace. Is that happening?
No, we have very strict rules in relation to sending weapons through
I'm not asking about the rules. Do you believe it's happening?
I don't believe it is. And what I do believe, though, is this. Can I say this in relation to Palestine? We're going to have to do more. I want to be very clear in relation to this. I meant it when I said I think we should legislate in relation to the occupied territories. I will fulfil the commitment in the programme for government to bring forward legislation in relation to the occupied territories. We have to do everything humanly possible here, use every lever at our disposal. We are watching children in Gaza being starved, quite frankly. We are hearing alarming reports of basic pain-killing medication not being available. And Hamas, let me be clear, is a despicable terrorist organisation. They offer the people of Palestine no future. What happened in Israel on October 7th, a disgusting terrorist attack, all the hostages should be released, of course. You can say that, though, and also say the next thing. That is, what is happening to the people of Gaza is despicable, disgusting, unconscionable, and a humanitarian catastrophe. And we've got to continue to do everything we can, every lever in Ireland and at a European level to help bring about a ceasefire.
I think a lot of people would absolutely agree with you on that. The Occupied Territories Bill has been stalled. It's been amended. It looks like it's not going to happen before the summer, according to the Taoiseach. Why are you dragging your feet on this, if it's as important as what you're saying?
So it is as important as what I'm saying, by the way, but it's about doing quite a number of things. So let me deal directly with the Occupied Territories Bill, but we're also increasing Irish funding to UNRWA, the UN agency that provides humanitarian assistance. We've also, as you said, recognised the state of Palestine. We're also working to provide through the EU funding to the Palestinian Authority.
So why not just pass the bill?
So I'm committed absolutely to passing a law in relation to the occupied territories. I'm meeting Senator Frances Black. I was in touch with her today. I'm meeting her next week to discuss this. I'm not going to pass a law, though, that won't stand up to legal test. I don't want to do something, and I'm sure she doesn't either. I very much accept her bona fides. I'm not going to do something, though, that is just to be seen to be doing something. I want to make sure that whatever we pass is legally robust. And do remember, when I was Taoiseach, I was the person who asked the Attorney-General to look at this and see if there's a way forward. I believe there is. Been talking to officials in my department on it as recently as today, and we will bring forward legislation, and I'll have a further update on what I hope is the timeline for that next week.
You're saying you're doing everything you can. I just want to ask you, what are you doing to ensure that there are no flights in Irish airspace with weapon parts going to the Middle East, going to Israel? It has been reported in a couple of newspapers that is actually happening.
Yeah, I'm conscious of that, and I think we'll obviously need to see if there's more that needs to be done in relation to that. But
are those reports not true? What are you doing?
So the information available to me is that people need to seek consent before any such flights take place, and there is no information available to me in relation to that happening. However,
are you taking their word for it then?
Well, no, you see, I think this is the fair point you ask. Because also to be very conscious that when planes fly well above our skies, the ability of Ireland on its own to know exactly what goes through Irish airspace is a real challenge, and I do think we need to work at an international level in terms of the treaties that govern those issues too. I accept there's more that needs to be done in relation to that.
I want to talk to you about Donald Trump.
Yes.
It's 100 days. He said it's the greatest 100 days.
Is that all?
It is. It is.
Is that all?
He says it's a glorious time. It's the greatest 100 days of first 100 days of any president. Do you agree with that, or is he fantasist?
Well, now in the Department of Foreign Affairs, I'm learning diplomacy, and the people.
I think you might start selecting reverse tonight. Then
let me say this: obviously, statement of fact. People of the United States decide who they elect as president. We wouldn't appreciate them telling us who to elect here. Their decision. They had an election. He won the election. He's the president of the United States. We will work with the United States and whoever the people of the United States have elected to get on with the job of making sure that the deep economic, cultural and people-to-people ties continue. And we're at that. But we're also, I do also think we have to be honest with friends. And it's, I think it's easy to turn up in Washington when everyone's getting along great. It's much harder to turn up when you have points of disagreement. And what I've been doing over the last period of time, as have others in government, is trying to engage with the new administration. I was over there recently meeting Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. And we're trying to make the point at both an Irish level and a European level that regardless of who's won the US presidential election, there is a statement of fact. We've had a couple of sunny days here in Ireland, but companies don't actually locate here for the weather. They locate here because they've access to a market of 460 million people in the European Union. They locate here because their companies make a lot of money here. They locate here because they have a really skilled workforce. And all of those arguments are as true now after the US presidential election as they were before it.
The fact remains, though, that Howard Lutnick, your counterpart, has said that pharmaceuticals are not going to be lumped in with a general EU deal. So is the Irish economy essentially at the mercy of Donald Trump?
No. So a couple of things. So firstly, the European Union, which we're proud members of, continue to make the point that we need a good trade deal with the US. We're offering zero tariffs. So there's a long way to go on this, and it's important we stay calm. It's important we don't respond to every single comment or every single tweet. We've got to take this calmly, slowly, maturely. And the second thing is this. Yes, we're a country that's benefited a lot from foreign direct investment. There's towns and villages right across Ireland. We're grateful for that. We don't take that for granted. I've explained why I think they're here, though. It's in their interest as well.
Is Ireland too reliant, though, on a certain amount of companies from one country?
Yeah, that was the next point. So no, we're not, because firstly, the overwhelming majority of jobs in Ireland are still created by Irish Indigenous companies. We now have many Irish companies creating jobs in the United States. There's over 700 Irish companies creating jobs in the US. There's many people that have gotten out of bed this morning in America who voted for Donald Trump, who are going to work in Irish companies. And secondly, we've also changed, to be very blunt, are we too reliant on the tax revenue that those companies pay? Well, we've actually changed our way of doing business. We're running the economy in a much better way, I think, in terms of keeping surpluses, setting money aside for the rainy day. We used to be kind of ridiculed. Why are you setting money aside for the rainy day? Why are you putting money into buffer zones and buffer funds? Well, I think the reason for doing that's becoming all the more apparent now.
Before we let you go, you were in your time, you were called the TikTok Taoiseach.
Yes. Was that a good or bad thing? I'm never sure whether that was meant to be an insult or a compliment.
That's what I was going to ask you. What do we think? Compliment or insult?
Well, if the question is, did I use social media to keep in touch with people? I did. And do I recognise that that's where a hell of a lot of people in Ireland actually go now to interact and get information? I did. I think we've got to kind of come out of the dark ages. Sometimes it's said in this sort of sneery way, you're on Simon Harris, he's on the social media. I started using this really during COVID, if you remember, providing updates to people. And I found that's where a lot of people are. And I think if politicians get off that pitch, you just leave it to be filled with misinformation and disinformation. It's important to be on the pitch, engaging with people, providing information, and that's what I do.
What's the rules whenever you get home in terms of screen time? Do your kids limit your screen time? Do you have to eat your dinner before you get your phone? Or
sorry, I wasn't sure where that question.
How does it work?
Yeah, it might be a little bit of reverse in my head. Well, what I find having kids, and I have two, I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, is when you get home, TikTok teach or not, or whether you're whatever job you're at, there's always more important jobs to do when you're a dad.
Look, we are out of time. I really appreciate yours tonight. Thanks so much for coming and seeing us. Simon Harris.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.